Have you ever fallen into a dream that didn't just unfold around you, but seemed to notice you? A dream that followed your movements, anticipated your emotions, or shifted its atmosphere as if reacting to your very presence? Most dreams are chaotic streams of imagery, fragments of memory and emotion stitched together by a sleeping mind. But every once in a great while, someone encounters something different, something unnervingly self-aware. Imagine this: you are dreaming, but before you realize it, before you even sense that something is strange, the dream itself behaves as if it knows it is a dream. Walls bend, not because you expect them to, but because the dream reshapes itself, as if it recognizes it is a construct. A voice echoes in the distance, not from a character, not from a memory, but from the dream world itself. It speaks with a presence, with an intelligence, with an awareness that does not feel like your own. This is not lucid dreaming. This is not sleep paralysis or a nightmare. This is something rarer, deeper, and far more enigmatic: the meta-dream. A phenomenon in which the dream appears to possess its own form of consciousness, something separate from you, something observing, responding, and sometimes even guiding. Most people will never encounter a meta-dream in their entire lives. For those who do, the experience is unforgettable. Some describe it as standing inside a living system, as though the dream is not simply happening to them, but with them. Others claim the dream speaks, warns, narrates, or shifts in ways that feel deliberate. Many wake with their hearts racing, not in fear but in sheer bewilderment, because it feels like they witnessed an intelligence hidden beneath the surface of their own mind. And perhaps the strangest part? A meta-dream often begins before you notice anything unusual. The dream acts aware before you act aware. It moves with intention, as if waiting for you to catch up. It observes you, almost studying you, like a reflection that moves a fraction of a second before you do. Tonight, we are going to explore this rare state in depth, psychologically, scientifically, and experientially. What is happening inside the mind when a dream becomes aware of itself? How can the unconscious generate something that feels like a separate intelligence? And most importantly, what does it reveal about the true nature of consciousness? In this video, we'll navigate through the deepest corridors of dream psychology, examine documented cases, and uncover the mechanisms of the brain that may give rise to this extraordinary phenomenon. Because if the unconscious can create a dream that knows it is a dream, then perhaps the mind is far more complex and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. Are you ready? To understand the meta-dream, we first have to recognize just how unusual it is in the landscape of human sleep experience. Most dreams are fragmented reflections of our day, faces blended with memories, emotions stitched to impossible scenarios, feelings exaggerated beyond logic. Even lucid dreams, which feel rare to many people, follow a familiar pattern. The dreamer becomes aware, gains clarity, and sometimes takes control of the unfolding world. But a meta-dream reverses this relationship entirely. Here, the dream itself shows awareness first. It behaves as if it knows it is a dream before you do. This subtle inversion is what makes the phenomenon so profoundly strange and so profoundly fascinating. People who experience meta-dreams often describe a sudden shift in atmosphere, a subtle change in the behavior of the dreamscape. The environment feels organized, intentional, almost predatory in its attention. The dream seems to adjust, adapt, or respond, not just to actions, but to thoughts, emotions, and internal conflicts. It's as if the dream is watching you. For some, this awareness comes as a whispered line of narration, a voice that describes what is happening or warns of what is about to come. For others, the awareness emerges through the environment itself. Doors that open before you approach, shadows that move in sync with your doubts, or entire scenes that rearrange themselves in real time, as though guided by a hidden intelligence. In these moments, the dream becomes more than a dream. It becomes a system, a structure that is not merely reacting but anticipating. People describe it as standing inside a mind that is not entirely their own, yet undeniably connected to them. What makes meta-dreams even more intriguing is their emotional weight. Many report an overwhelming sense of significance, as if the dream is trying to communicate something vital. Some speak of feeling studied, others feel guided, and a few feel evaluated, as if a deeper layer of consciousness is assessing their inner state. This phenomenon frequently appears during periods of emotional transition, psychological stress, or profound introspection, but not always. Sometimes it appears without warning, arising from a seemingly ordinary night's sleep, leaving the dreamer shaken by the clarity and intelligence the dream expressed. Neuroscientists suggest that meta-dreams may emerge when the mind blends unconscious imagery with higher-level cognitive processing, creating a state where the dream takes on structure and purpose. Psychologists, on the other hand, often interpret it as the unconscious organizing itself in a moment of heightened self-reflection. Regardless of the explanation, the experience leaves a lasting imprint. People rarely forget their meta-dreams. They linger in memory, echoing like messages half understood, leaving the dreamer questioning where the boundary between unconscious imagination and conscious awareness truly lies. A meta-dream is, at its core, a confrontation with the unknown inside yourself. A moment when your inner world acts as though it has its own mind. To truly understand the meta-dream, we must look inward, into the architecture of the psyche, where identity, emotion, memory, and the unconscious coexist in a shifting, fluid landscape. Dreams are not random chaos. They are the mind speaking in its oldest language. And in a meta-dream, that language becomes startlingly articulate. In dream psychology, the self splits into two primary components: the dream ego, the you inside the dream, who participates in the scenario; the observing ego, the silent internal witness who watches, evaluates, and reflects. In typical dreams, these two merge seamlessly, creating the illusion of a single self navigating an absurd world, but in a meta-dream, they separate. The observing ego awakens while the dream ego remains absorbed in the narrative. This split generates a profound sense of awareness, an internal doubling of consciousness. This separation allows the unconscious to express itself more deliberately. Think of it as the psyche attempting to deliver a message not through symbols alone, but through structure, intention, and even narration. The dream begins to behave like a story with a director rather than a random sequence of scenes. From a psychological lens, meta-dreams often emerge from heightened emotional states. When unresolved emotions accumulate, grief, fear, guilt, longing, the unconscious may activate a deeper organizational process. Instead of presenting scattered fragments, it constructs coherent scenarios designed to confront the dreamer with what they are unwilling to face while awake. Some therapists interpret meta-dreams as a moment of intrapsychic negotiation. One layer of the mind, usually silent, steps forward to communicate. A voice may appear that is not recognizable as your own. Guidance may come from the dream environment itself. This is not a separate consciousness, but an internal function operating with rare clarity. Meta-dreams are also linked to dissociation, not pathological dissociation, but cognitive dissociation, where the mind's functions temporarily diverge. The dreaming self continues its experience while another part evaluates meaning, structure, and significance. This dual processing creates the illusion of a dream that thinks. The unconscious is not primitive, chaotic, or irrational. It is ancient, symbolic, and profoundly intelligent. In rare states, its intelligence becomes so organized that the dreamer perceives it as external. The dream seems alive because the unconscious is alive, always working, always shaping the internal world. A meta-dream can also function as a psychological mirror. It reveals conflicts we repress, desires we bury, and truths we avoid. In this heightened state, the unconscious may stage confrontations with symbolic figures, recreate unfinished emotional scenes, or expose psychological patterns with surgical precision. The dream rearranges itself not randomly, but with intent, as though trying to help the conscious mind understand itself. Some dreamers describe the experience as transformative. They wake with a feeling of insight, clarity, or even catharsis. Others feel unsettled, as though they glimpsed a layer of themselves they were not prepared to see. In all cases, the meta-dream is a moment when the unconscious steps into the role of guide, director, or narrator, a rare psychological synchronization where the deepest parts of the mind momentarily take control of the dream's structure. It is the psyche revealing its intelligence. From a neuroscientific perspective, the meta-dream is one of the most intriguing anomalies in human cognition. To understand it, we must examine what normally happens in the brain during sleep, and then explore what must go differently for a dream to behave as if it is self-aware. Most dreaming occurs during REM sleep, a state characterized by intense neural activity. The visual cortex lights up, the limbic system floods the brain with emotion, and memory networks fire unpredictably. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic, planning, self-reflection, and metacognition, is partially offline. This is why dreams are usually bizarre, nonlinear, and lacking rational structure. But meta-dreams break this pattern. A hybrid brain. State researchers believe that meta-dreams may represent a hybrid activation pattern. The emotional and sensory regions remain in REM intensity, but the prefrontal cortex becomes partially reactivated. Not fully, because that would wake you, but just enough to enable higher-level cognitive processes inside the dream. This partial reactivation allows the brain to analyze itself, monitor its own activity, create narrative coherence, predict emotional responses, evaluate internal symbolism. These abilities give rise to the eerie sense that the dream knows what it is. Default mode network resurgence. Another important player is the default mode network, DMN, the system responsible for self-reflection, internal narrative, and the sense of self. During normal REM, the DMN is unstable, but during meta-dreams, it appears to surge back online, allowing the dreamer to experience a kind of internal commentary. In some cases, this commentary becomes externalized within the dream as a narrator, a voice, a guiding presence, or a dream environment that reacts deliberately. The dream feels intelligent because the brain is momentarily integrating unconscious symbolism with conscious-like self-awareness. The temporoparietal junction and identity splitting. The temporoparietal junction, TPJ, is critical for distinguishing between the self and the other. It helps us understand agency, intention, and perspective. In meta-dreams, the TPJ may destabilize slightly, causing the brain to misattribute internal cognitive processes as external agents. This is not a malfunction, it is a reinterpretation. The unconscious becomes other, and its organization feels like a separate intelligence. This mechanism is similar to what happens during out-of-body experiences or certain meditative states where identity becomes fluid and distributed. Prediction circuits in overdrive. The brain is a prediction machine. During REM, it constantly tests emotional scenarios and simulates outcomes. But in a meta-dream, prediction circuits may escalate into hyperactivity. This allows the dream to anticipate your actions before you consciously decide them. This can create experiences like doors opening before you intend to walk through them, environment shifting before you form a thought, symbolic figures responding to your emotions instantly. It is not the dream predicting you, it is your brain predicting itself faster than your awareness can register. Why meta-dreams feel alive. The sense of an intelligent presence arises when several factors converge. Emotional intensity from the amygdala, symbolic processing from the hippocampus narrative structure, from the DMN partial logic from the prefrontal cortex agency attribution from the TPJ. When these systems synchronize, the dream becomes so organized that it feels conscious. Not in a mystical sense, but in a neurocognitive sense. The brain is modeling itself, reflecting on itself, and communicating with itself through layered processes. For a moment, the dreaming mind is both the author and the observer. Although metadreams are rare and not a mainstream subject of sleep research, there are enough documented accounts and scientific observations to reveal a compelling pattern. The phenomenon appears in clinical reports, psychological studies, neurological experiments, and thousands of personal testimonies from individuals who rarely forget the experience. These cases help illustrate how a dream can exhibit self-awareness, or at least behave as if it does. Case 1. The dream that spoke first. A well-documented case from a German sleep clinic involved a man in his early 30s who repeatedly heard a voice inside his dreams that was not tied to any character. The voice did not speak like a memory or hallucination. It acted as a director. Before scenes unfolded, it would say, "Watch closely. Do not interfere." This part is important. The man said the dream felt alive, as though the environment was orchestrated by something that understood the purpose of the dream better than he did. Neurologists noted unusual REM patterns in his polysomnography data, including intermittent bursts of prefrontal activation, rare in normal REM sleep. Case 2. The self-narrating dream. In Canada, a woman in her 40s described dreams that narrated themselves. As she walked through dream environments, an omniscient voice described her movements, her emotional reactions, and even her thoughts. What shocked researchers was that the narration often preceded her actions. The narrating voice would say, "She will open the door now." She recognizes this place, but she doesn't know why. This anticipatory quality aligned with enhanced prediction signaling in REM sleep, what researchers called pre-conscious motor preparation. But the woman insisted it felt intentional, as if the dream itself had a storyline to deliver. Case 3. The anticipatory dream experiments. In a small experimental study at the University of Wisconsin, participants were trained in lucid dreaming and monitored during REM sleep. A handful reported experiencing dreams that reacted before they made conscious decisions. For example, one participant dreamed of walking through a hallway. Before he intended to turn left, the hallway morphed into a left turn on its own. The dream expected him. The researchers suggested this was due to the brain predicting internal intention microseconds before awareness, creating the illusion of a dream with foresight. Case 4. The meta-lucid dreamer. Perhaps one of the most fascinating reports comes from a man who achieved what researchers called a meta-lucid state. He became aware that he was dreaming, traditional lucidity, but then sensed something even stranger. The dream itself acknowledged his awareness. He described it like this: "I knew I was dreaming, and the dream knew that I knew." In this moment, the environment stopped behaving like a pliable fantasy and instead responded in complex, symbolic ways, as if protecting its own narrative integrity. He reported feeling observed, not by a figure, but by the dream world itself. Case 5. The dream director phenomenon. A recurring pattern in many accounts is the presence of a dream director, an intelligence that does not appear in human form, but influences the dreamlike a system with intention. People describe environments shifting with purpose, warnings before emotional scenes rearranging to deliver meaning, dream characters acting with scripted awareness. One participant said it was like the unconscious stepping out of the shadows to show what it truly knows. The consistency across cases. Across cultures, backgrounds, and decades, the common themes are unmistakable. The dream feels intentional. It behaves as if aware. It communicates in structured, symbolic ways. It reacts faster than the dreamer can process. It feels like encountering a deeper intelligence within oneself. While science interprets this as complex neural synchronization, many who experience it describe it as something more, an interior intelligence revealing itself. In the end, the metadream leaves us with a question far bigger than sleep, dreams, or neuroscience. It challenges the boundary we draw between the unconscious and the conscious, between the self we know and the self we rarely meet. It reveals that our minds are not simple, linear engines of thought, but vast internal landscapes, layered, symbolic, and alive with patterns we barely understand. A meta-dream is not merely a strange experience. It is a moment when the internal world shows its depth. It is the unconscious stepping forward with remarkable clarity, shaping not just symbols, but structure, intention, and presence. It is the psyche expressing intelligence in a way that feels foreign to the waking mind, as if the deepest parts of you momentarily gain the ability to speak in a language beyond words. When people describe feeling observed, guided, or even evaluated, it is not because a separate entity has entered the dream. It is because the unconscious is revealing what it always does in silence. It watches, it interprets, it organizes your emotional reality. In a meta-dream, you meet this part of yourself, directly, undeniably, and often uncomfortably. Perhaps this is why meta-dreams linger in memory long after ordinary dreams fade. They touch something fundamental, the awareness that your inner world contains intelligence that operates without your permission or your conscious understanding. It is a reminder that you are not a single self, but a complex constellation of processes, memories, emotions, and hidden narratives that interact behind the curtain of consciousness. Neuroscience can explain the mechanics: hybrid neural activation, predictive processing, identity dissociation, DMN surges, but it cannot explain the meaning. Psychology can describe the symbolic patterns and emotional dynamics, but it cannot fully account for why some dreams feel intentional, structured, or profoundly alive. And philosophy, for centuries, has struggled with the nature of consciousness and the layers of self-awareness that define human experience. The meta-dream stands at the intersection of all these fields, a moment where your brain behaves like both a storyteller and an audience, a moment where your unconscious reveals itself not as chaos, but as design, a moment where the dream becomes aware in a way that feels eerily close to how you define your waking self. So what does this tell us? That consciousness is not binary. It does not switch on or off. It exists in grades, layers, and thresholds that blur into one another. A dream that knows it is a dream may be the closest we come to witnessing consciousness observing itself, not metaphorically, but literally. It is a reminder that the boundary between you and your mind is far more mysterious than we tend to believe. And the next time you dream, if the world around you shifts with intention, if the environment reacts with intelligence, if a voice speaks from nowhere, if the dream notices you, stop. Listen. Because you may be standing at the edge of a rare threshold, face to face with the part of yourself that dreams even when you're awake.